Welcome to our long-term care redevelopment planning task force on June 28th. Welcome, everybody. Declaration of interest you can clear anytime you see fit during the meeting. We have a great agenda here today, and I'd like to start off with Andrew Rodriguez. Please give us an update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be sharing a presentation today, and we have also a member from the design team, Deborah Wadsworth, who will also be sharing an update. So before I get started, can everyone see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So we have three main components for the project team's update today. I'm going to start with the general update just since our last meeting, which would have been in March earlier this year, some of the activities that were completed since then and what we are focusing on moving forward in terms of the campus of care elements. We'll then move into an update on the design. So you'll see some images in terms of the site plan and floor plans that Deborah will be running through. And then we also have a portion of the meeting where Jennifer Cornell will be sharing some updates with regards to assisted living services and some of the tours that were done looking at existing operations. We'll also be intermittently stopping throughout the presentations to address any questions and answers before moving on to the next portions. So in terms of an overall schedule, I like to paint this picture in terms of a simplified Gantt chart just to show what we've been working on and where we're going. So since really March, when we received the direction to include as part of the campus of care, the assisted living and village square components, the project team has actively been working on wrapping up the schematic design phase for the long-term care component and starting some of the programming stages for assisted living in Village Square, which were originally shown as high-level blocks, but now these blocks need to be worked through with the same level of detail as essentially the long-term care component had been advanced to. So that's been a big focus over the past few months by both the team at Rockwood Terrace, Grey County, as well as the design team, just to work on catching up really with those components and bringing them up to speed. We did receive this submission of the schematic design package from the design team in May for the long-term care component. So that was submitted and that has been under review. We had a chance to have a pre-consultation meeting with Wes Gray and just go over the site plan, some of the assumptions and considerations with the campus and the different elements. So that was concluded earlier this month and went quite well. And then ahead of the formal public consultations that we have scheduled as part of our work plan for later on this fall, we did have the opportunity to engage through 3 different sessions. 2 of them were in person at Rockwood Terrace, and one was a virtual setting earlier this month. Just the chance to meet with staff, with residents, with some of the neighboring community members and provide an update in terms of where the project is at, the process that we followed, and what are some of the next steps for the project team. So in terms of where we go from here, there is about roughly 12 months or a year of design work that will be split between design development, which will take us until the end of this year, and then what we would call the contract document stage or working drawings. So that will last roughly 6 months going into next year, where all the detailed contract documents and specs are prepared essentially for this project to go out for tender. So, recognizing there's been a tremendous amount of work done by the design team, Grey County and Rockwood Terrace to date in terms of providing input and leading to the design in the stage it's in, there's still a lot of design work that's remaining ahead in order for this project to be in a tender ready state for the campus of care. Couple things from the ministry perspective. So the development agreement and the discussions with the ministry have been quite positive in terms of having that process work through. And the project team is very, will be working through the preliminary plan submission, which is the first technical submission with the ministry, and hoping to have that wrapped up and at least have some comments back in the next couple of months. So pleased to announce that has been progressing quite well. And as part of our overall work plan and schedule. Couple things from a schedule standpoint that I do want to make sure that the task force is aware of is we have, as a result of moving forward with the scope of the campus of care. So not only long-term care, but with the village square and assisted living. This has had the net impact of adding approximately 4 months to the design stage. And we tried to identify opportunities wherever we could to streamline the process and work in parallel when some of the technical submissions are going to the ministry. But the reality is we have quite a bit of scope in terms of the village square and assisted living to also design and make sure there's an appropriate amount of time with the end users to capture all the requirements and validate it. So this has about a 4-month impact in terms of when the project would be going out for tender. And this is because previously it was long-term care only. Now we're looking at a bigger scope with long-term care, assisted living in the village square. So that's over the design period all the way up to going out to tender. In construction, we're estimating that an additional 6 months would be required to construct the full campus. Now, we did talk about options to, what about a phased or a partial occupancy where long-term care could be occupied while other phases or other components are being constructed. And just based on our preliminary discussions with Grey County, we understand that the preference is really to have the whole campus constructed before a first resident would move in. And that's strictly to minimize costs and effort associated with hoarding, protection for noise, dust, vibration, et cetera, and really having a cleaner slate for occupancy when the whole campus is complete. So using a process where the first resident date would coincide with occupancy for the entire campus, we are forecasting a first resident date in June 2026, taking into account the campus of care. Is there any questions with regards to schedule and timeline before I move forward?
Does the committee have any questions? Christine, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to everyone here. I'm very pleased for this presentation and all the fine detail in terms of where we are and where we are going. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind just identify, Andrew, the design development phase, if I could word it as such or label it as such, that it takes 1 year. Without taking up too much of the committee's time, can you just explain what it is that the design development really means? I note that on the chart here, there are some definitions in boxes, and for design development, there isn't. So if you wouldn't mind just that opportunity. And secondly, the first resident phase where we would have residents moving in. Could you please just explain the time frame of or how it works where not having residents in the building while construction is going on? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so for the first portion of the question, design development. So what we have right now, and you'll get a sense of it once Deborah presents just the floor plans that have been developed to date. Previously we started with the conceptual phase where there were large blocks showing the different areas where the dining room would be, where the resident rooms, the interrelationships between spaces within the long-term care home. The schematic design refined that further. So now you can see clear definitions between the different spaces within the floor plans. And what you've seen is in different disciplines, there are briefs that have been prepared. So for mechanical, for electrical systems, during the design development process, it's really about the character of the space. There's a lot more work that's being done on the type of fixtures around furniture, fixture and equipment. We're going to be looking at things like access control, security, audio, visual, electrical and mechanical systems in a lot more detail and fully designing those versus a higher level or preliminary brief that would be more appropriate for the schematic design stage. The contract documents, before going out for tender, in addition to each of the drawings, there's a project manual or a set of specifications that will go out to any of the contractors that will be bidding on this. So there's a lot of time and effort that goes into preparing these documents and making sure also that they are coordinated between disciplines. So mechanical, electrical, architectural. So a lot of that work would take place. Some of that would start during the design development phase, but a lot of that would proceed through the contract document phase to make sure the package is buttoned up before going out for tender. Deborah, is there anything you would add to that in terms of design development or contract documents that I didn't cover?
No, it's really increasing details. So moving from block plans to documents that show how something is built, and there's a lot of thinking and coordination that goes between that start point and the end. It's actually a year is, although it sounds like a lot of time, it's actually not for a project of this size. It's we'll be working quickly to prepare that. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. Christine, could you kindly just repeat the second question, please, with regard to the first resident date?
Certainly, and I do want to say, Andrew and Deborah, thank you very much for articulating the detail on design development. That really clarified that phase for me anyway. Thank you. I was just wondering, I did note in the report, it did speak about the residents' first deadline where the construction would be completed versus, at least the way I was interpreting it, versus residents being in the building in their new residence while construction was going on in a different phase. And I wondered if you could just explain that. First of all, did I have that correct within the report? And also what that actually means. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so in the actual contract that would be going out to the general contractor eventually, and even with the design team, there's a start of construction date and a contractual date that you may have seen, which is substantial performance, which would be occupancy. So at that point, that wouldn't be when the first resident date would occur. We still have another roughly 3 months in there, and that's to close up deficiencies and also to allow for the delivery of furniture and equipment post occupancy. So we've left what we consider would be a fair and reasonable amount of time for a project of this magnitude to allow for that process to take place, essentially the closeout before a resident goes in, because it becomes incredibly more complex if the residents move in to try to coordinate that piece with staff, with the residents. So that, I believe that may be the difference between what was in the contract versus the date here. And it's because of that closeout process that we built into our overall project schedule.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
A question from the chair, Andrew. Since we started this amazing journey we're on here, we always had the date in our minds, 2025. The ministry said you must have this done. I assume since we've expanded the project that the ministry is okay with going past that date?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Mr. Chair. And based on my experience, a firm answer wouldn't necessarily be provided till much later on in the project, once the project is going out for tender. I can share, however, the following. There are mechanisms available to bring construction back, but they do have operational implications and cost implications. So there's always the potential to apply premiums to try to bring that timeline back. In my experience, in other projects, it has come down to presenting that to the ministry after the tender closes and saying, we have an option to bring this back to 2025, but it is going to cost X% more. Would the ministry be willing to share that? If not, our most cost-effective path will take us to mid-2026. And so by using that strategy and putting the decision on the ministry, I have generally seen that, not generally, in all cases, I've seen them say, go with the most cost-effective schedule and not entertain a premium to accelerate construction by 6 months. But that actual decision took place after tender closed. So I don't see any real risk at this point, because we can set up the tender so that we can understand exactly what that premium would be to achieve 2025 and position it such that that decision would go to the ministry.
Thank you, Andrew. A very wise move you're making. I see Brian, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if this is for Andrew or Kim, but I just, Andrew, you had mentioned that you had site plan meetings with West Gray. You've had pre-consultation meetings with West Gray. I'm just wondering who else is on that team. I'm assuming the CAO and Randy and Jennifer. Who is part of the team that's involved in these updates?
Yeah, I can answer that. So it does certainly involve the CAO. Randy was there as well, and there were 3 or 4 members from West Grey that were there. We coordinated this process through Randy and Kim to make sure I'll say the correct representatives were there at the meeting. And this is really ahead of our site plan application and approval process, just to get any preliminary feedback about how the different components have been placed on the site. What are the requirements ahead of an actual submission to try and minimize the risk with the process and resubmissions. Randy or Kim, is there anything you would add further to that?
No, I think you summarized it well. For sure, we've had the manager of planning involved in those discussions. We've had the director of public works as part of that, as well as the chief building official and director of development for West Grey as well. So trying to make sure that everyone's aware of where the current project is at. And as Andrew indicated, making sure that we've identified what are the information requirements that are going to be required to accompany the site plan application once we submit that to West Grey.
Great, thank you.
If I can add, really our goal here is to ensure that we're proceeding together and moving forward with the most efficient and effective process that we can. Like, we need to understand some specific things about servicing from West Grey's perspective. So it's been a really good collaborative process so far. And we're really happy with what we've had.
Thank you, Kim. I guess a question that may be a wee bit ahead of the agenda, but I'd like to ask it anyway. We further down our agenda, we have a proposal to accept land with West Grey, and it concerns traffic. And before that in our agenda, we are going to maybe pass an update to allow the architect to do a traffic study. Is that sort of premature ahead of one another, or could somebody explain that to me, please?
I can try and take a stab at that, Mr. Chair. So we actually, part of that traffic analysis will help inform some of the work that's going to be required and the timing of that land transfer. We'll be able to identify where the main construction accesses are going to be with respect to the project during construction, and to make sure then that we're providing opportunities for existing traffic to be able to move in and around the site. So that's something that we'll be working with the Casey and design team and the sub-consultants and West Grey staff to be able to move that forward. So it definitely, we need that traffic information prior to finalizing any further details with respect to the timing of that land transfer that we'll be discussing later on the agenda.
Thank you, Randy. Does the committee have any other questions? Hopefully, if I can't see anybody, Tara, please tell me. I think I do not see anybody else. So Andrew, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just in terms of a next step from a costing perspective, so I mentioned during the fall, we would be working to coordinate some public consultation meetings, and just as a preview, what we're expecting to have is some 3D renderings and images of the campus of care and all 3 components, and to be able to do this in a more, I'll say, formal or structured approach in line with our work plan. So that's on the docket for the fall timeframe. When we last spoke, we had an updated cost estimate and project forecast that was based on the Class D cost estimate. And we are expecting to come back to the task force later on during the fall with the Class C cost estimate once all of the components are up to speed from a schematic design perspective. And so just a reminder to the committee that at the Class C, we're still at about a 15 to 20% level of accuracy, really reflecting, as I mentioned before, the 12 months worth of design work to take us to the Class A pre-tender, which is in the 5 to 10% range. So I just wanted to set that framework really ahead of the next costing update that we'll be receiving. And some of the areas that we want to continue working through to have more clarity on scope and in turn cost is around the access road and the site servicing. So the extension of South Street and Rock Street. some ongoing work with regards to site grading and drainage design. Some of this requires some investigation on site to be done and some technical parameters to be conveyed to the design team. So we're working through that. Net zero and net zero ready feasibility studies. So these are some of the topics that are part of the scope of work of the design team, and we will be coming to a conclusion of these portions, at least for the perspective of Class C costing during the fall. So I just wanted to highlight this as a bit of a preview of what we expect to have during the fall when we come back to the committee. Before we move forward to the design portion of the meeting, I know on the agenda there was the memo with regards to the design change order. Kim, would you like me to go over that, or is that something you'd like to address before we hand over to Deborah?
Thanks, Andrew. I think it's very straightforward, but you should just go ahead and cover it off, please.
Okay, no problem. So for members of the task force, after our meeting in March, and the authorization to proceed with the assisted living in the Village Square component, we reached out to the design team in order to request for a fixed fee to amend essentially the existing contract for the provision of design and contract administration services for the whole campus of care. We did receive a fixed fee proposal, which was reviewed. And within the memo, it provides some commentary just with respect to the budget that was allocated for design fees. So the fee submitted was within it. We also looked as a comparator of the percentage of construction budget from the initial competitive process to now the change order process, and the percentage was within it. So on that basis, and based on our review, we recommended proceeding with that design change order based on it being fair and reasonable in our opinion. So what this would do is this will amend the contract to include not only long-term care, but the Village Square and assisted living. We have set it up such that from an invoicing perspective, we will see long-term care separate, and then the Village Square and assisted living also separate, and this will facilitate the settlement process and cost submission process to the Ministry of Long-Term Care for the long-term care component only. And we would follow a similar process when we enter construction with the general contractor, so that we're able to track costs separately, but bundle them under a single contract.
Thank you, Andrew. I guess a question for Madam Clerk. Do you want me to read this motion concerning the memorandum now, or wait further on it on the agenda?
Certainly, you can read that and have it put on the floor. Since Andrew has spoke to it, I think now is a good time for that to be considered.
Okay, happy I do that in committee. I'll read the motion we have here. That Grey County proceed with executing design change order as a result of additional design service for the proposed assisted living Village Square components of the Rockwood Terrace redevelopment project. Someone to move, put on the floor, please. Moved by, got another Brian now, sorry. Moved by Brian, second by Scott. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor, please. Opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, thank you. Andrew, I'm going to turn the floor back over to you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the first portion of the update. I'll now I'll hand over to Deborah just to provide an update of the design.
Okay, thank you. So I'll share my screen. The problem is I have two screens open and I'm not sure what you're going to see first. So if you see a slide with the Rockwood Terrace Campus of Care, we're doing well. If you see a Word document, please let me know. You seeing my slide?
No, we do not.
Okay. It shows me that I'm sharing.
It must be with somebody else.
Okay, let me try again.
On Zoom, Deborah, there's a set, there you go.
There we go.
There's one extra step compared to Teams.
Teams, thank you. Okay, we're ready. So is everyone seeing it? This is good?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Okay. So you've seen this slide before, but I want to just credit the people that put the work into this. About 30 designers and engineers have been involved in the preparation of the work that's been presented today. I especially want to credit the effort of my team at KZN and our partners Ted Handy and Associates, Vertec Landscape Architects, and Quasar Consulting Engineers, and Forge Media Wayfinding Consultants. So the last time we met, we had just finished the pre-design work, and recently we completed the schematic design phase where we focused on the functional arrangement within spaces, as well as the broad strokes of defining the culture of this place. The ideas that we're working with emerged in the Rockwood Terrace user group meetings, and you'll see some of these ideas on my slides. So with few minor exceptions, the site plan has remained unchanged. The village square is front and center on South Street East, where it will welcome the community with an inviting facade. The long-term care home with its front door facing Rock Street has a compact center core and resident home areas that stretch to the east and west and the north, and they define a series of courtyards and outdoor spaces for residents and the community. Walking you around the site, over here we have a community amenity space, the driveway to the long-term care and assisted living, and there's a covered entryway, a canopy over the entranceway and driveway. The entrances to the LTC and assisted living, they're separated, and I'll go into that in more detail a little bit later. This is visitor parking. And then we have the secure courtyards. So these are for resident use and they're accessed from inside the long-term care home. And then we have a walking path. This walking path is developed from a walking path that is already there. And over here is parking for staff, a dedicated staff entrance, and an outdoor patio where they can take breaks and have lunch. It's screened from view from the street, and also some landscaping screens it from the service and loading area in this corner here of the building. So the biggest change has been to move the location of the assisted living from the top of the village square. And so on the right, we talked about, the reasons why it was important to have the assisted living connected to the village square and the LTC. And it has moved to the top of the LTC. And so this design change was triggered in large part by realizing that it would simply function better for staffing. But the change also represents an opportunity for efficiency, seeing that the LTC and assisted living have a similar cadence in terms of suites and support spaces. They will share the same structural grid and electrical and mechanical risers. And as I mentioned the last time, the goal that inspires the team and aligns major design decisions is that of creating a home for person-centered care. We've done that through tremendous attention to resident personal space that provides privacy and infection control, promotes independence and connection within the home and the community. And it is set up operationally to provide a clean, efficient, safe environment for residents and staff. So just as a point of interest to connect to Christine's question, this is what the schematic floor plan looks like, and you'll see it's heavily dimensioned. It's got door swings and clearances, and a lot of work has gone into test fitting the furniture and equipment in these rooms. And then you can just keep this image in your mind and then compare it to the block plans that I'll show you at the village square at the end, and that'll show you the difference in 3 months of design work. So starting with the village square, which is still in the block plan stage. Actually, there's an example right there. That's what a block plan looks like. For the village square, you enter in at the south, off of South Street. That's the main entrance, and it opens into a central open space that leads to 6 to 8 tenants. So it remains to be seen who will be here, but we anticipate small businesses, perhaps a satellite library, services that cater to elder care. There's also a bank of public washrooms and a cafe and seating area that opens out to the corner terrace, that community amenity space that I showed you previously. In the upper left, we've planned for a pop-up space. So on this drawing, it's called Open Gallery Space. And the pop-up will be for seasonal and community events like craft fairs, Christmas shows, high school plays, or even for promoting a new service in town. So now I'll walk you through the LTC. So this line encompasses the entire home. The front door opens into a lobby, and it's ringed with amenity spaces and social spaces for residents on one side and administrative functions on the opposite side. The central corridor goes south with an internal access point to the village square for residents who are able to visit independently, or for families and visitors that want to take their person there for a cafe or a walk. To the north, the corridor leads to the elevator bank and the ground floor resident home areas. The dining rooms and the serveries are located centrally. So between the first and the second floor, these floors are virtually identical. There's good access to the kitchen, and the kitchen area is located here. Food, laundry, and waste move vertically between the ground and the third floor via service elevators. So we've heard in our interviews and user groups that this was very important. We've created a small vestibule to help support staff keep dirty items out of view of residents and visitors. The resident amenities are located with views and natural light. So there's an activity room, lounges, a therapy room, and at the ends of each wing is a sunroom and an outdoor terrace. And this is the same on both floors. The resident suites line the wings of the home. And in the east and west wings, we have a center core. So this is fronted with the care desk for each side. It also has clean supply closets, the tub and shower rooms, some mechanical and electrical risers, and the team room. And in the north wings, the care support spaces are located to minimize travel distances back and forth to the east and west wings, and also just to minimize the distance and the traffic of dirty items. So we've located this for optimal operations in consultation with the Rockwood team. And this is the Ltc Core. So as I mentioned, it contains the public and service elevators, central laundry and kitchen, as well as the loading and waste management areas, bulk supply storage, the staff lounge and locker areas, and the main building service spaces. In this corner of the front facade is the dedicated entrance to assisted living. So it's a ministry requirement that this entrance be separate from the LTC. The assisted living entrance includes a small waiting area, mailboxes, and an elevator, which takes you up to the third floor. And this is the block plan of the third floor for assisted living. So at the third floor, the elevator lobby opens to a lounge that overlooks the driveway and the corner community terrace. The care desk doubles as a reception, and we're locating the Director of Care, Marketing and Program Staff offices on the front of house zone for easy access by residents and visitors. This floor houses 40 resident suites and contains all the resident social spaces such as the dining room, activity room, personal laundry, and a multi-purpose room. And like the long-term care below, resident suites line the wings with a sunroom and outdoor terrace at each end. And it has care support spaces at the cores on the east and west, minimally in the north, just anticipating that the care level on this floor is less. And so where we are now, all of these components are coming together into a cohesive building. We've been looking at them all individually, at least in terms of user groups, but these pieces are all coming together now, and we're looking at the next stage, the design development stage, where we'll be developing the character and more the look and feel of this place, both from the interior and the exterior design. And also just working through some of the themes that are emerging. So we're working with biography, community, and dwelling. And that's what we'll be focused on until the design development stage morphs into the final parts of the construction documents in the winter. Any questions?
Totally amazing. Questions from the committee? Brian Millen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The visitor parking, and I guess this question is probably to Deborah. The visitor parking, where will visitors from that parking lot enter the building? Is there an entrance from the parking lot, or will they have to come around to the main entrance of the LTC or assisted living? Does that question make any sense?
It does. It does. There are two entrances to the LTC. One is only for staff, and the other one is just the front door. So they will walk along the sidewalk around to the main entrance.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, did I see your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. And Deborah, thanks very much. The design looks wonderful. Question is just in regards to the 40 suites. Are there any is there any opportunity for couples to reside, in the same suite?
Potentially. We're looking at two sizes of suites, a smaller one and a larger one. So I'm not sure if this group is aware of it, but there has been now for some time some discussion of changing the rules or changing the law around couples living together in elder care. And so we're anticipating the possibility for couples to live together. So we're designing suites for flexibility for couples, for flexibility for memory care, for flexibility for accessibility. And we think with the two sizes that we can accommodate most people's needs.
Well, that's great to hear, because I'm certainly hearing, a number of people that are aging and looking for assisted living, but, they'd like to remain together. So it's great to have that flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Warden, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My brain is a little foggy on the assisted living location then and now. So I wonder if you could just walk me through that again, and please just cover again the rationale for the change.
Sure. It was when we did the master plan work and we were looking at the location of different components. We were originally looking at placing the assisted living above the village square. And so there would be a connection between the long-term care, assisted living, and village square. So it was important to have access to all three of those. We saw them, Grey County, Rockwood Terrace saw them as sharing a lot of synergies, right? Activities for elderly, places to go for visitors and families, and then also a continuum of care from assisted living to long-term care. When we started to look at, when we got into looking at the assisted living beyond just blocking it as a site element, the team decided it made sense in terms of operations. So for staffing, to have everything on one floor. And then when everything was on one floor, one, it wouldn't fit on top of the village square, but two, we saw that there was a lot of similarities. So at that point, we didn't have a plan for the assisted living. It was just a block location. And so the first thing to do was to do a test fit on top of the LTC. And we found that the 40 units of assisted living actually fit very well, like almost shared the exact same floor plate. And so from then on, the decision was simple. If it was better operationally and it fit in terms of a floor plan, then we decided to move it. Just made sense.
Yeah, I think if I could add to that, there were kind of three pieces to that assessment. The first one was just a question: how many units could we fit if we stack it above long-term care? And once that was demonstrated from a test fit perspective that 40 could fit, from an operational standpoint, this would be preferential. And from a capital standpoint, we're expecting some efficiency. So it really hit all check marks after doing that work and being able to delve into some more detail after there was authorization to include that as part of the scope.
Thank you, Andrew. Great question, Mr. Warden. If I may, I know it's very early in the design. Electromechanical have an awful lot of work to do, but I'm just wondering, in your concept you showed us, electromechanical, I always have thoughts about mechanical, electrical rooms and so on throughout the building. Is that something that's going to happen in the design later, or?
No, they've been incorporated into the schematic design.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
I guess I missed that. Okay.
We have electrical risers, we have mechanical rooms, ICT, so communications and telecommunications closets, as well as an incoming electrical room, the main mechanical space on the ground floor. It's all there.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing, which it's way early in the process, but just want to say it now, so at least like I said it. Asphalt drawings in this project are extremely important, and it has to start right from the get-go. And with this building, it's an amazing building. That is going to be their guide in the future, is those asphalt drawings. So I just want to point that out.
That's well noted, Mr. Chair. In terms of just for the task force benefit, the production of record drawings is part of the scope of work from the design team. So certainly, once we get to the point of going out to tender, as-built drawings will be a key portion of the deliverables from the contractor, as well as making sure that a sufficient amount of funds are held back until those are produced to make sure those are received in a timely manner at the end of the project.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions from the committee? Christine, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a very quick one, in my opinion. Is this a stage where there's any synergy or connection with what is required through Grey County administration for connection with IT or telephone compatibility? Thank you.
It's coming up, I'll say. So we haven't looked in detail at systems like that, but that is definitely something that happens in this next stage.
Thank you. There's no other questions? Andrew, Deborah, you want to continue? Or are you done?
I'm finished, thank you.
Yeah, so the next portion of the agenda would go to Jennifer in terms of the update on the assisted living site visits.
Okay, Jennifer, I guess I'll turn the floor over to you then, please.
Great, thanks, Mr. Chair. Every time I see that presentation, I love it more and more. And I know I've been living and breathing it, so I'm glad that you've all had a chance to see it. So I'm just providing an update on some of the work that has been happening behind the scenes in terms of some tours. On June 1st, team members from Grey County, a few people from Rockwood, Karen and Terry and Brandon and I, as well as Kasian Architecture, we toured Schlegel Village's University Gates in Waterloo. We were guided through their main street, serveries on the main floor, common areas in assisted living, and the whole of memory care. And our team had a chance to ask questions about functionality, operations, and design. Schlegel Village's University Gates is comprised of 3 buildings: long-term care, the University Research Building, and assisted living and retirement living. Located on the ground floor, the main street serves as a continuous route connecting the 3 buildings, and they call each home area a neighborhood. That's the language that they use. And of course, the whole campus is a village. As we toured, we focused on a few areas. So some of the key things we were looking at is how each part of the campus or the village relates to each other. The long-term care, assisted living, the main street, and how they all share a back of house. So where are the synergies? Where are the opportunities to learn from the Schlegel experience in areas such as kitchen, laundry, maintenance, housekeeping? We looked at circulation and flow and restricted areas, how they manage those items. And we had a chance to look at and ask questions about operational considerations, staffing, managing a separation between the long-term care and assisted living related to outbreak, how they support couples in the different neighborhoods of the village. And then we also looked at design, style, character, architectural features, and the materials that they used to build this village. I wanted to just note for committee that University Gates is a very large village. It serves approximately 500 people, requiring varying levels of care, from independent and retirement living to assisted living / memory care to long-term care. A large part of our tour was spent in the memory care neighborhoods because that really aligned best with what we are imagining for assisted living in the Rockwood Terrace campus. A few items that I wanted to just bring to the attention of committee for some discussion, and we'll be discussing this throughout the process and planning. So for assisted living, I just wanted to remind committee that there is no provincial funding for assisted living or for the village square. So the cost of operations of both are the cost to the county or to the individual resident. Because of that, we must be very careful, thoughtful, and intentional in the alignment of service provisions with what the market can bear. Our campus proposes 40 assisted living units, and based on this number of suites and our current understanding of the need, we're focusing our operations on planning memory care. But to Deborah's point, she mentioned that we're building in flexibility. And as we're working through the design, we're looking to build it in a way that it can flex and support differing needs as the population changes over a long period of time. So right now, the need may be memory care. In 10 years, it may be more accessibility. So individuals using assistive devices, wheelchairs, that type of thing. It may be the need is greater for couples during a period of time, maybe not. And so as we work through all of the different questions of how to design, our focus is to design it in a way that it supports the greatest number of needs over a period of time so that we're not limited based on our design. We've also met with Briere and Simcoe County. We haven't had an opportunity to tour, but have had a chance to meet with each of those organizations to ask about 1 million questions. And from these meetings, we believe that 20 resident home areas are like 20 suite resident home areas are operationally appropriate to both support the resident need as well as operational and fiscal responsibility. And as we work through the planning, we'll regularly revisit the operational costs associated with the planned level of care provided. And so we're still in the early days of sorting out those details, but are very conscious of it and want to be sure that the level of care we're planning for is affordable for the individuals and doesn't have a negative impact on the costs associated to the county. And so that's where we're at right now. That was a 4-minute update that was actually a number of months and lots of conversations, but happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Jennifer. Does the committee have any questions? Mr. Warden, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Jennifer, you used the terms assisted living and memory care in the same breath. And I just want to make sure that because from my understanding, those are almost two extremes. One is, you need some assistance, and the other one is you need a lot of assistance with memory care. So help me out with that, because you almost seem to be lumping the two into the same sort of care area.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And it's a great question that we too went on a journey to explore. Because words do matter, and wanted to be sure. I wanted to be sure that we were using the right terminology. So in our discussions with our partners out in the world providing this service, what we've come to understand is that retirement living offers a lower level of care on a daily basis. So retirement living is a little bit more than independent living. Assisted living and memory care are really partnered together. They're both similar levels of care. Assisted living can be memory care. So in a memory care level of care, you're receiving a little bit more specialized support related to perhaps responsive behaviors, experiencing the early to mid days of a dementia or memory challenges. That kind of in-between stage from being able to live in an independent living and needing long-term care support. So assisted living is, memory care supports that. Assisted living can also support individuals in that kind of in-between stage with respect to physical challenges. So perhaps, recently recovered from having a stroke or other physical challenges that require support with mobility, bathing, some of those areas. So it is a lot of times the language is used interchangeably. And for us, we are considering retirement living to be a lower level of care and assisted living / memory care at a higher level of care. And so we're using that lens in our design discussions now to be sure that we're creating a design that supports individuals that will need that slightly higher level of support.
Ms. Warden, please go ahead.
So then what do we refer to as memory care within the long-term care service?
Sure. So, and that's a great question too. Thank you for that. We're actually looking to find some terminology that feels right for the residents living in long-term care with memory care and dementia. But currently the language is behavioral support. That is kind of the language used in long-term care across the industry. And so at Grey Gables, there is the home area that is the behavioral support transition unit. We're looking at updating our language to be a little bit more person-centered and less of a label, maybe something along the line of bridges to care or something to do with transitions. But in long-term care, it tends to be around behavioral support or dementia care.
And so industry wide, is there sort of an attempt to have everyone aligned and using the same terminology?
I hope so. I think we may be leading in that respect, in that language does matter and the words that we use to label the places that people live. And I think the Fixing Long-Term Care Act with a focus on quality and person-centeredness will help support that.
Madam CEO, I've seen your hand come up. Do you want to comment on that?
I just wondered if I'm hearing the warden's question correctly. Would it help for Jen to describe kind of the phases that you go through from an early onset of a dementia or Alzheimer's diagnosis, and that those initial stages of memory loss, and how you progress through that disease and what those different requirements are? Would that be helpful? Is that what you're looking for, sir?
No, I think I understand Jennifer's explanation now. I was just confused by the language of using memory care in the same breath as independent living, because I understood those to be two complete different levels. But if we're talking about behavioral care versus memory care, then I get it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Warden. Scott, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I thought I got it until this discussion started. So now I'm not sure. Retirement living and assisted living. I'm just wondering, Jennifer, if you could please give examples within our Grey County community of current retirement living and assisted living. My thought was a lot of our retirement homes have the assisted component within them, and that you're able to purchase a different level of care as you require it. That has been my experience. So I'm just trying to, if you could please help me with that. And just what I guess my second question is, if you entered into our assisted living, and I go back to the couples, if one only required retirement living, would they still be able to live with their spouse if the spouse required assisted living? So I'm just looking at some of those definitions and the criteria. I've certainly got long-term care down pat, and how you access long-term care, but now this is becoming confusing for me. Thank you.
Please go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for that question, Scott. So I will just acknowledge that we're talking about this now together, kind of for the, in the beginning stages, and we've been sorting through these same questions for a period of time. So it was also not super clear to us at the beginning either, and so we've been working through it. And I may call on Karen just to provide some support with answering some of the question. So what I can say I'm not sure that I could name homes or retirement homes within Grey Bruce with specificity in terms of what the levels of care. I think you're correct. Some organizations, some retirement homes offer retirement home care with varying levels of care support that you can purchase different packages and add additional care for additional cost as you go. Some homes try to offer fewer of those options so that it becomes less of a kind of piling up of additional costs that can become quite costly and can also be challenging to operationalize to ensure that you have the right staffing levels. So some homes offer 2 or 3 different care level packages versus one care level package with 8 or 10 or 12 different components that you can add on. In our discussions with Simcoe County, they offer retirement home living in their campus, not assisted living. And that was our first kind of foray into really understanding the difference between the two. And so they offer a handful of additional support. And then when the person's care needs exceeds that, they then are supported to transition into either assisted living somewhere else or long-term care. So we are still in the early days of kind of costing out what the different levels of care points would be. And we have some information that has been shared with us from Briere and Schlegel in terms of what the care points are for assisted living in their memory care model. And that allows us to better cost out the operational costs of supporting individuals in a memory care or assisted living situation. You asked about couples, and I don't believe that there would be any reason that someone would be not able to move in with their loved one if one requires more care than the other. And in fact, we asked that question at Schlegel, and they do support couples that fit that scenario. Down the road, when the independent seniors apartments are built, that would be another opportunity for people to live on the shared campus. And another option they may not live in the same room, but they may be able to also live in the same campus. Karen, did you have anything you wanted to add in terms of the level of care and kind of other examples?
Yeah, yes, good morning, everybody. Just in discussions with Jennifer early on, and I think we had a case scenario that happened to come across my desk at the same time where we had someone looking to move their mom into Rockwood because they were in a retirement home that originally, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like originally cost them $2,000 a month. And when mom needed more care, suddenly they were up to $6,000 a month. So we want to try to avoid that situation if we can, so that when people move in, they're clear about what we are providing for that fee, and that down the road, there isn't surprises as to, oh, that costs an extra $500 a month now, and that's an extra $1,000. So that was important to us. So we're trying really to avoid that situation.
Thank you, Karen. Scott, did that answer your question?
Yes, well, it was certainly helpful. More questions will likely come as the definitions become clearer. I guess, one further question, just based on what Karen had to say, these assisted living won't be subsidized by the county, I don't believe. So I guess in determining, it is important to determine what the staffing requirements are going to be so that we can set the fees, that are, within the market standard across Gray and Bruce. Thanks.
Thank you. Jennifer, there you are.
I see Kim has her hand up.
Sorry, Kim. Oh, there you are. Okay, go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to respond to Councillor Mackey's point. I think we need to be very careful as we proceed here, understanding the original pro forma that we saw. When you took into account the cost of construction, the cost of funding the construction, etc., we are running very close to the line when it comes to a break-even point for assisted living. So it's a fine balance between what the public and our current market can support and what it's going to cost to develop and service the vision that we have here. So we're working closely. I think it's a bit too early to know for sure exactly how things will be. We as staff understand that is the direction from council, that you don't want to be in a position where there's a substantial levy contribution to the assisted living side of the operation. So I'm taking that as our instructions, and we're working towards that goal. I think we'll have some better information, as Andrew indicated, later on in the summer.
Thank you, Kim. Is there any other questions for Jennifer from the committee? A great update, Jennifer. Thanks very much. I seem to be all over the place on the agenda because we seem to be talking about everything at once, but that's good. So I guess I'll move on to the agenda. Kim, do you have your hand up? No. Okay, I'll move down to Rock Street land transfer. I'm going to read this motion we have first. That report CAORRP 0522 we received regarding a request to the municipality of West Gray to transfer a portion of the lands at the end of Rock Street to facilitate the redevelopment of the Rockwood Terrace canvas of care. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor McQueen, second by Christine. Who is going to speak to this?
Me, myself, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Randy.
Great, thank you. And good morning again, everyone. So we wanted to provide the task force with an update with respect to a portion of lands that are located at the end of Rock Street in the settlement area of Durham, which currently form part of a cul-de-sac at the end of Rock Street. Can everyone see the screen there, the slide deck? Yeah. Okay,
yes,
great.
We can.
Just put it on full screen mode, maybe just to help. So the lands in question are described as part 1 of Register Plan 17R-1602. They're highlighted in yellow on the screen. It's approximately 1/4 of an acre, so not very large space, but a space that will be form part of the overall Rockwood Terrace Campus of Care, and the task force may recall that when Deborah was showing the design space, this portion would actually be part of the northeast corner parking area, or the visitor parking area that's located in the northeast corner of the Campus of Care. The lands are currently owned by the municipality of West Grey and are part of the road allowance, and therefore in order to transfer these lands to the county, the lands will need to be formally closed at some point as a public highway by West Grey. Eventually, Rock Street and South Street East will be extended to connect the 2 streets, which will then provide that municipal road access to access the proposed Campus of Care. Once the roads have been extended, the cul-de-sac at the end of Rock Street will no longer be required. We've had initial discussions with West Grey staff regarding the process to transfer the subject lands. And West Grey staff noted that a temporary cul-de-sac may need to be recreated at the end of Rock Street during the construction of the Campus of Care, just to accommodate existing traffic utilizing Rock Street. West Grey staff also noted that it may be beneficial to temporarily widen Rock Street to provide additional room for parking as some of the existing Rockwood Terrace staff utilize portions of Rock Street to park today. Ultimately, the need for these temporary improvements will depend on the timing of the transfer lands, as well as details regarding construction access to build the Campus of Care. And as noted earlier, that's being analyzed as part of the casing design team as part of that traffic analysis. This is so that once we have that information from the casing design team, we'll have some further discussions with West Grey on what temporary improvements may be required to accommodate this land transfer. If it's determined that a temporary cul-de-sac or widening of Rock Street is required, the county does own land on the east side of Rock Street, and therefore could temporarily transfer lands to West Grey to form part of Rock Street during the construction phase. And then once Rock Street is fully built out, the lands required for the temporary cul-de-sac or widening can be transferred back to the county, which could be then utilized for future development going forward. Any expenses associated with the land transfer can be just part of the overall Campus of Care project. The timelines to carry out the next steps have not been fully determined at this stage. It's our understanding that West Grey staff will be bringing forward a report to West Grey Council in July, just to make West Grey Council aware of this matter and to talk about potential next steps. Agreement and legal staff have noted that they can prepare a memorandum of understanding between the county and West Grey, which would outline the steps required to complete the land transfer. And we included some of the potential next steps in the report, just to give a sense of what could be required if the temporary widening and the temporary cul-de-sac were required. West Grey staff have been great to work with, and ultimately they want to work with the county to find the most simple and cheapest way possible to accommodate this land transfer. So we'll continue to work with West Grey regarding this land transfer, and we'll provide the task force with any updates at future task force meetings. So the recommendation has been moved and seconded. It's just to receive this report, and as noted, we'll provide further updates to the task force as we go.
Thank you, Randy.
I'll stop sharing my screen here just 1 second so we can see everything. If I can find the button.
Oh, that's better. I believe.
There we go.
Go ahead, Christine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I very much appreciate the report and the presentation, Randy. Just for everyone's information, July 12th at 9 a.m. is the West Grey Council meeting. We only have the one in July, so FYI. Thank you.
Thanks, Chrissy.
Thank you. This is a committee of inequality. Oh, okay. Brian Milne, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Randy, I'm just wondering, is the current turnaround actually being used currently? Because I've been back in there and it's not much of a turnaround, really. There's a lot of stuff on there. I'm not sure you can turn anything around on it currently other than a bicycle, but I'm just wondering how needed is the turnaround really?
Yeah, it's our understanding it's used from time to time, again, by existing Rockwood Terrace staff to be able to, right now there's parking that's utilized on the Rockwood Street to be able to, so if they're pulling out, if it's tight, to be able to pull around. I've done that myself because I've been down to the site many times associated with this project, and I've used that for that purpose. There's also a trucking company to the east of Rock Street that also utilizes, I believe, that some of that space. So that's something that we'll be analyzing further, though, in terms of looking at what, how that is used. Do we need a temporary road widening? Can we delay the transfer of that portion until some point in time as part of the construction so that we can maintain existing traffic if it's being utilized, but not having to deal with back and forth transfers? So again, we're trying to find the most simple and cheapest route forward to accommodate this land transfer. And I have no doubt that we'll find a solution that works and is the most inexpensive option for all. So
Thank you, Randy. Madam CEO, please go ahead.
Thank you, Randy.
Just to add, it's my understanding that West Gray does use that turnaround for their winter control.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Warden, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Randy, if I look at the reference plan, the subject piece, part 1, appears to be adjacent to Rock Street, right?
Yes, through the legal review, though, it's that portion is part of the public highway. So that's where it has to be closed as part of the public highway and then eventually transferred to the county.
Right, so I completely get the depiction in figure 1, which is the reference plan showing part 1 to be adjacent to Rock Street. But when you go to figure 2, and I'm assuming in figure 2, that orange piece is part 1, correct?
Correct. It's yes.
The orange piece as depicted in figure 2 does not appear to be adjacent to Rock Street. Am I wrong about that? There seems to be a gap there.
Yeah, it's adjacent to the road allowance of Rock Street, but you're right. Based on the imagery, the air photo, it looks like Rock Street has been constructed to the very eastern edge of the road allowance. Yeah. So it doesn't look exactly adjacent, but it definitely is adjacent to the actual road allowance of what we would call Rock Street, which would be the future location of the municipal road connection that would be form part of Rock Street.
So the blue in diagram 2, in figure 2, is the actual is the accurate depiction of Rock Street then?
Yes.
Which would make it adjacent to part 1.
The light blue lands are actually the lands that are currently owned by the county. Right. And so once Rock Street and South Street are constructed, that would be transferred to West Gray as a municipal road.
Right, I understand now. Thank you for that.
No worries.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thanks, Randy. Does the committee have any other questions, concerns? Seeing now we have a motion on the floor. I'll ask for all in favor of the motion. Show of hands, please. Opposed, the motion is carried.
Thanks.
So moving on for agenda, do we have any other business here today? See none, I have a question for, I think, Madam CEO, somebody other than me, I guess. Our next meeting is scheduled for September. Probably a lot of the lower tiers are going to be into a lame duck situation. And just wondered, does this impact county council in any way with us moving forward what we're doing?
Thanks for that question, Mr. Chair. And I don't believe that that is the case. We are proceeding with a direction that has been of some long standing. The restricted acts really come into consideration where you're looking at something that's wasn't in the budget and hasn't really been an active and approved initiative prior to coming forward during that time. So it would be my belief, based on the timelines and the work that is being put together right now, that we should be able to simply proceed along, as we're not going to be outside of this. It'll be, some of this is dependent on the province and the province's decision-making timelines. We are in a couple of places sort of dependent on them to get back to us so that we can continue to proceed along. I suppose there's always a potential for things to get held up, and that, you know, could have an impact. But I think Andrew and the team at Colliers have worked really hard and worked in collaboration with the province to try and avoid any of those things.
Thank you, Kim. Yes, sir. We know the business here today. That's a cute little person you have with you, Madam CAO.
I'm just filling in because he's not very well, sorry.
So we know the business here today. I'll ask for a motion for adjournment, please. And thank you to everybody. It was a great meeting. Moved by Scott, second by Christine. That we adjourned. A show of hands in favor of adjournment. Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.
Day, everyone.